Welcome to another episode of Millennial Money Matters with Kelly Turner.
And Derek Mazzarella. And Kelly, do you know what?
What?
We have a very special guest today.
Who is our special guest?
Our producer, Justin. Justin, say hi.
Hi, how's it going?
So I'm sure you're all wondering why Justin is here. And the answer is we are doing a Q&A. For those that don't know, it's a question and answer one. So we heard from the peoples.
The peoples.
And we're going to actually answer your questions. So this is a podcast for you guys.
Yeah, and we thought it was this is the final episode of season 2. So
Yes.
if one of the 20 people downloading every time, we appreciate you and love you.
Thanks, Mom.
Right? We are taking a little break for the summer.
Yep,
right?
as one should,
As
right?
one should, and then we'll be back in September for season 3. But we thought we'd end it with hey, we've done a lot of episodes at this point, and the people have questions.
Yeah, so I think we're ready to see what they have. Justin, what's our first question?
Sure. All right, so question 1. Is it true that if you invest $100 a month at age 25, you'll have over $1 million at 65?
Okay, so this is a 40-year time horizon. See that math?
It's great math. Great math.
yeah.
Great job.
All right, so I had to look this up because no. Well, actually, I'm gonna say it's possible. You have to earn about 13% per year.
Which is possible in some years.
Yeah, in some years. Well, some years you'll blow that by, but not an average. So it's essentially, if you wanted to have let's say a safer quote unquote return of 7%, you need to save about $350 or so a month to hit $1 million by the time you're 65. Or the trade-off is you have to just take insane risk and really, go crazy. I would say probably based on inflation, all the other stuff, $100 a month, even $1 million 40 years from now is not going to be like $1 million like it is today. I don't think even $1 million today is what we feel it is, right?
When we were kids, if you had $1 million, you were rich.
Rich.
Now we're I might be able to retire.
Like if you lived in $1 million house, it was like a mansion with 2 pools and probably a butler, right?
And now it's like a 4-bedroom colonial.
Yeah, right. So
that needs some work.
So the answer is sort of, but no, I would just recommend saving more.
Yeah, and I think the other piece to that is everybody's financial circumstances are different, and where your money's going is different, and how you're getting taxed on it, and that's where you speak to your financial professional.
Right. Good ad there.
Just saying,
right.
I'm looking out for you, Derek.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Question 2. How long? There we go. Okay. Question 2. How long do you think the time to own program will be funded?
Ooh, that's a great question. Okay.
Oh, that's for me, obviously, right?
That's obviously for you. I would like to tell you Derek has a slight advantage here because he is the one who compiled these questions. So these for me are a little surprise each one. Oh, okay. So what is Time to Own? Time to Own is a Connecticut Housing and Finance Authority bond program. It is a $25,000 forgivable mortgage. Lots of people keep calling it a grant. It's not a grant. It's a forgivable loan that is forgiven in 10% increments over 10 years. It is for first-time homebuyers living in their primary residence. So there's my first disclaimer. What is this?
Okay. Is it forgivable stuff taxed? Do you have to pay taxes
No.
on the amount that's forgiven?
You do not.
Oh.
So it's a great program. There is income limits for it. I don't want to say it's hard to qualify for, but not everybody can qualify for it, even though everybody would love to. So that's my little Chaffa story. How long do we think it's going to be around for? So we're a couple years into this program already. The state has really committed to it. So the initial batch of Time to Own funds actually was structured very different. You could get up to $50,000, but it depended on what town you were purchasing in. It was actually very complicated. They have simplified it a little bit, but they've really made a commitment to continue funding this. So we don't have a timeline. What I do warn people, though, is we don't always have money in the fund. So the state bond commission essentially puts money in the fund. We see the money depletes. Sometimes they refill it before the money's gone, but we have had circumstances where we have had a gap. There was a gap last summer where we went a month with no funds.
Does that mean you just put the loan on hold then for that, or
it depends on
the start date back?
Yeah, it depends on the client. If you're just shopping, right, we would tell you hey, there's no funds in here right now. If you need these funds in order to make the transaction happen, you got to take a break. There were borrowers that were caught going under contract as the money went away. That was a little bit more complicated. Some of them obviously terminated contracts because they need it and the seller needed to move. Some of them did just get extended while we waited for the money. The hard thing is we did not know when the money was returning. And that's the really hard part for people is when the money's gone, we're like, hey, Jeffa, can we get our money back? And they're like, hey, we don't always have control over that. So it can be a little bit tricky. But I would say for the foreseeable future, some version of this program will continue. I do think they are going to continue to make it harder to qualify for, which is what has happened thus far. It's going to get stricter and stricter as the money kind of gets used up. They're going to keep honing it in because they really are looking to help a specific buyer with this. This is very heavily for first generation home buyers who are trying to get into houses and are lower income and really need the funds.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Okay. Sorry, everybody, if you noticed in the video or the audio, there was a quick cut there. I got a call from my kid's school. We had a little injury. We're okay. Everything's fine. But welcome to Millennial Parent Life.
Yeah.
When you see the name of your kid's school on your phone, it is a slight moment of terror.
I got yelled at by my wife a while back because I didn't actually have the school's number saved in my phone. I was like, fault. She's like, you didn't pick up. So, yeah.
Oh, no, it is saved in mine.
Yeah.
So
No, she's right, though. She's right. I should have it saved.
You should have it saved. So we're back. So, Justin, what is the next question?
Yeah, sure. So next question 3. What's one splurge you'll never apologize for?
Oh, why don't you go first and I'll go second?
Oh, I was not really ready for that one.
Yeah,
let's see.
that's
One
for both
splurge.
of us.
Honestly, it's I like things to do for me are like I won't regret that. Like any time with friends, if I could say like that is time well spent. So if I had to spend anything on like a trip or something like that, I never regret that.
Yeah, mine is 100% travel.
Yeah.
So it's that's like time you don't get back. It's stuff that as you get older, you can't always do.
Yeah.
So you got to do it while you're young. I will also say for all of you Gen Zers and millennials who are listening who don't have kids, like travel a lot pre-kids because it's much more expensive when you have children. But
I'm going to throw another one out there because I love going to concerts. So if I can go to a concert, I spent way too much money last year to go see Pearl Jam. But I also experienced, I went to Tom Petty like 3 months before he died.
Oh.
So you never know, especially with artists, how long they're going to be around for. So if you have a chance to go see someone that you really want to go see, go do it.
I love it. So we're pretty similar. I think experiences. Experiences are more important than things.
Yeah. Has there been a thing that you bought, you're like, oh, wow, I spent way too much money on, but I'm really glad I bought this?
No, because I don't spend a lot of money on anything. I'm cheap. Mine is the small stuff from as we've discussed, the Amazon. And I'm like, I love this thing. I love this thing. So I have, it's called a Snackle Box. It was $20. It's a box that holds snacks on all different little sections. And that was one of my best purchases of the year. We use it all the time. What's yours?
I guess maybe my recent one, maybe it's recency bias, but I just bought myself a guitar finally that was really nice. I had like a starter guitar for like 12 years. So I actually bought a really nice one. I was like, wow, this sounds so much better. So yeah, I'd say that.
See, things that bring you joy.
Yeah.
All right, Justin, what's next?
Cool. Love that. Next question. Roth IRA as a tool to invest in a home?
All right, so we could probably both answer this one.
Well, you're going to start.
Yeah, okay. Well, for those that need a reminder, Roth IRA is traditionally a retirement tool. It's you put money in there after tax, it grows tax-free, you take it out tax-free for retirement. The one benefit that a Roth IRA has compared to, like, say, a traditional IRA is you can actually, any money you put in, you can take back out. So it has some liquidity there compared to some of the other investment options. With that said, I don't love it as a home buying like vehicle. I think it should be more for retirement. To me, it's like, oh, I need an extra like 5-10 grand to close on this house. Like it could be a good backstop, but I wouldn't have it as the primary tool for saving for a home.
Yeah, and I would agree with that just on the accessibility of the funds too, that we do sometimes struggle with people who like have money saved in something outside of a bank account because a Roth is not a bank account. And we need those funds. And a lot of people think like, oh, I need the funds when I close. But we often need them, we always need them ahead of time because we have to see them move into your accounts.
Yeah.
And for some accounts, some companies, it could take up to a week to get those funds out into a vehicle that you can then write me a check from. And
then you have to source it too, right?
We have to source. So I need your Roth account. Then you have to have them cut the check. A lot of them still mail checks. So they will mail paper check, which drives me crazy. And then you have to wait for it. And then you have to deposit it. And then it has to clear your account. And you've just added like a lot of unnecessary steps. So if buying a home is in your 1-year plan, a high yield savings account is a better spot for your money.
Totally agree. Well, I mean, to that point, you're going to have alignment with your investment, whereas your investment in the Roth may be really aggressive. And then we may have, let's say you were buying a house last April.
Yeah.
Like last month, right? How does that look?
Yeah, well, you're missing some of your down payment money. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
and you've talked a lot about like buckets, having your money somewhere where to do its job. Money in a Roth, its job is not your down payment on your house. That's not what its job is.
And I know like they could, there's some instances where you could take it out for first time home buyer and all that stuff. But I think we're both in agreement. I think your priority should be a high yield savings account, and then is a backup if you need it.
If it's an emergency, if the house was a little bit more than you thought, yes,
Right.
we can talk about it, but it's just not super. It doesn't really make sense.
No, like most people don't have like a 7-year time horizon to buy a house. It's like I'm going to buy it
now,
next 2 years or so. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
All right. So somewhat on the same topic, is it smarter to buy a starter home now or wait and save my forever home?
Ooh, this is a great question. And I will say one of the problems with answering it is that starter homes were much more popular 30, 40 years ago when people were purchasing their first home in their 20s. Okay, because you were getting married and having children in your 20s. The average first-time home buyer today, the last I looked, was like 38 years old. So we sort of have missed the boat on your starter home. Your starter home was the apartment that you paid too much rent for. That was your starter home. And that's where the funds for your starter home went. So what should you do? In reality, the hardest thing for people right now is because they're skipping the starter home, they're missing the equity that they gained from that home to then put into the forever home. So buying the forever home is significantly more difficult because 20% on 500,000 is a whole lot more than 20% on 200,000.
Right.
But if you have lived in your $200,000 condo for 10 years as your starter home, you've paid the mortgage down by $100,000 while you've also, which is your living expense, right? So you've paid for both your housing and you've gained your equity. So when you go to buy the next house, you now have, say, $100,000 to put down that you didn't have to save outside of it. Where when you were renting, you are paying for your living expense and you have to save outside of that, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit tough to answer. I get why people are skipping starter homes because when you're 38, you're like, I don't want a 2-bedroom condo. I have a family. But in the long term, is it a great idea to skip the starter home? No.
I'm probably the weird person with this because I think I'm the only person on the planet that probably paid more for a starter home than my
Well, you went from city to suburb. You went from city to suburb, which is a very different life.
Yeah. I will say a lot of this is timing though too because let's say you're going to stay in your starter home for like 2 years, right? Like, no, don't do that because you're going to have all these closing costs,
I would
like
agree
all these
with
realty fees, like all this stuff. So if it's like a 2-step plan that you're saying, hey, like I'm going to get a smaller condo, let's say, or get a starter home first, then move, like you want to have a longer time frame where you're going to be in that starter home. Some instances where I've seen it work are if you're going to do, hey, I'm going to do a live-in flip kind of deal. Like I had a buddy that renovated his whole house over like 4 or 5 years and then sold it for a bigger home. Or the other thing is like, hey, I'm going to do my starter home and then rent it out. Like that's some instances where it can make some sense as well. But to Kelly's point, like we're just not buying houses at 20 years old anymore. It's just challenging, but it's, once again, it's like not an answer, but it's like, you gotta be personal. The market matters too. Like I moved from a city to a suburbs, like moving, staying in the same market matters. Like our starter homes cheaper or more expensive, like there's a lot of factors that go into it. I kind of wish we still had a lot more starter homes. The problem is they're just not building a lot of new starter homes either.
Well, and that is probably the other piece to it is that, way back in the day, right, whole developments of small affordable houses were being built. When was the last time you saw a development of small affordable houses being built? The starter home is now a condo. Full stop.
Yeah.
That's what a starter home is. It is a condominium. All new builds, especially around us, are $700,000 to $1 million because it makes more sense for the builder.
Well, if they don't have the word luxury in it, does it even count as a new home anymore?
It doesn't count as a new home.
Yeah.
The other thing too is I think a lot of millennials really leveled up their expectations because we lived in really nice apartments. And that's a struggle for people is when you move into your first apartment at 23 and it has granite countertops and tray ceilings and a pool and a gym.
Yeah.
You want that in your real house. You don't want to move into a 1940s Cape with like a janky kitchen and white appliances and linoleum and shag carpet. You don't want that. You want the next thing because that's what you're used to.
I also don't know if we're as handy as previous generations either. With
Also.
like fixing stuff.
Also probably accurate. So what should you do? Starter home versus forever home. If you're looking to buy a forever home, you just really need to spend your starter home years saving every dollar that you can.
Yeah. Yeah. You can do it either way. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer though.
Yeah, it depends on you.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, next question. How does Derek make podcasting look so effortless and cool?
So that was a Ron Burgundy question. I wanted to see if Justin would read anything, and he clearly just did.
He will read anything. How do you make it look so effortless and cool, Derek?
It's just all this practice. Actually, you don't know this, Kelly, but I come in here and do a fake podcast by myself without you here. So I've been practicing my butt off.
No wonder why I look dumb on these and you look great. Look at that. That was a good one. And Justin, I'm proud of you for reading it out loud. You're a great producer.
Yep.
Am I showing my age there?
Do you not know who Ron Burgundy is?
I know the name.
Oh God, I know the name.
All right, stop this podcast right now and go watch Anchorman.
Can we just point out, just for the audience, that while Derek and I are older millennials, I'm the oldest millennial. Justin is not a millennial.
No. Gen Z over here.
He's a Gen Zer.
Yeah, that's right.
But we appreciate you.
Yeah, if it wasn't on TikTok, it doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
Justin.
Yeah, basically. All right. What percentage of income do you need to retire successfully?
All right, so this I got.
I know somebody who wrote a book about. Similar.
Who might that be?
Who could that be? Whom? All right, so this was a question actually from my buddy Rob, who's an avid listener to the podcast. So shout out to you, Rob. Thanks for the question. So the general answer is usually about like 70% to 75%. I mean, this is like, once again, it's very hard to give specific advice because a lot of it depends on how much you're spending and what you're saving going into retirement. So, I mean, theoretically, you're saving about 15 or so, hopefully, % of your income going into retirement. So when you're in retirement, you don't have to save that. So that's already 50% right there. I found it's actually usually, like in real life, probably closer to like 85, 90. Like most people tend to spend money in retirement, especially early on. And like there's like kind of two things that happen. There are a lot more free time. So usually doing your hobbies or traveling or doing something, because every day's a Saturday.
Yep. Every day's a Saturday. I like it.
Yeah. And then the other thing I noticed is that you're spending a lot more time in your house. Remember COVID times? You're just like looking around like, I got to change everything. Like the amount of retirees that I have that like retired within the last like 3 years that have redone their kitchen, it's like 90%.
Wow. So you're looking for money that you maybe wouldn't have spent pre-retirement.
Yeah. So it's like there's just trade-offs, right? Because if you have kids, like the kids kind of thing goes away and all that stuff. But most people don't like really drastically change their lifestyle. So I would say like the 70% number you hear online is probably too low. I'd probably expect like 80 to 85 to be a little bit more accurate.
So millennials, get saving.
Yeah, save. Or just because most people are going to change their lifestyle.
Yeah, well, that's like, who wants to? You're like, I'm a grown up and I finally don't have to work anymore. I'm not giving up the things that I like.
No, why would you? Yeah. And then my favorite thing is when people quote unquote downsize. Like, the house may be smaller, but it's more expensive because it's nicer because they want all the things that they didn't get in their previous house.
See that a lot on our side, and I will tell you that is the 55 and older community scenario. Is that I have people that downsize from the 4,000 square foot house to the adorable 2,000 square foot 55 and older community that it costs more than the house that they just sold.
Yeah.
And it's got an HOA and it's got all this stuff. So I totally agree. We see that a lot. People downsizing for higher payments.
Yeah, the size is down, but the payments are up.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, next question. Is an investment property worth it?
Ooh, that is a great question. I think we can probably both answer that. You from the financial standpoint and me from the practical standpoint. An investment property is an amazing tool to build wealth. Full stop. Okay. It's an amazing tool to build wealth. However, there's many different types of investment properties. There are homes. There is commercial investment properties. There are multifamily investment properties. There are single family condos, vacation investment properties. We did the Airbnb episode, a few episodes ago. So what an investment property looks like to you, okay, is an important part of this question. Are you talking a vacation home that you'll rent out sometimes? Are you talking about I'm buying a 3-family home and I'm going to put tenants in it and make money off of them? Are you talking about I'm going to buy a commercial building to put my business in? All of these look different. Yes, an investment property is, if you can afford it and it makes sense for your lifestyle, again, great tool to build wealth. Flip side of it is all of these different types of investment properties have work to be done. Okay. If you are going to buy a multifamily house and you are going to have 3 sets of tenants, first off, you're going to put 25% down on that property. You're going to have a fairly high interest rate. The mortgage payment is going to be high. You are going to have to make sure that you're making enough on rent in all of those. And then you also need to be prepared that either you or a property manager that you pay is prepared to unclog toilets at 3 o'clock in the morning, to replace air conditioning units, to put a new fridge in when it dies, to clean trashed apartments when people move out, to replace carpet. You just took on a job. Okay. An investment property is a job. If you are looking at an Airbnb, we talked all about that a couple episodes ago, right? That's its own whole host of work. So all of these are work, where some investments, which Derek talks about, really don't take you work as the person, right? They're there. They're just doing it. An investment property can make you more money than some of those investments, but you are paying for that money with your time. So that's sort of my opinion on it. What's your thoughts?
I totally agree with everything you said. I think the biggest misnomer with real estate investing is like the passive part of it, because there's no passive piece of it unless you're doing like a REIT, which has its own challenges, which I don't want to get into, or you're like buying one of those syndications or any of this stuff. And all of those have different pros and cons. You're usually giving up some upside or tax treatment to reduce the amount of work you're doing. So a lot of it's really dependent on what you do. I think they can be great investments. They can be great diversifiers away from just doing everything in a 401k, for example. And they could, the nice thing is, unlike most other investments, you can leverage them more effectively or less risky, because you can leverage stocks, but that can get very risky.
Yeah.
So I think, I have a real estate investment property, so I would recommend them to most folks that can handle them and have the time and have the, financial ability to do it. But it's still going to be a personal thing. So, I think overall they can be worth it. But I don't get a lot of toilet calls at 3 a.m., thankfully, knock on wood. But, you do have things that come up, and it's not like you just set a button and set it and forget it. Even managing a property manager is like a part-time job.
Yeah.
So you're not managing the property, but you're managing the property manager. So there are things that you have to consider and fit in your lifestyle. Do I have time to do this stuff? Can I do it effectively? Do I know the market right? Because you can lose a lot of money too by buying the wrong house, the wrong time, not doing the research, thinking, I saw this flipping show. What a great investment, blah, blah, blah.
The tiki-taki.
Yeah, right. And then you buy this absolute dump and you don't know the codes. You can't have a contract because you have no relationships with anyone. So yeah, it can be good, but there's a lot of ways it can go wrong too. And you need to be aware of that.
Yeah. And I would say, just as the quick aside, the two easiest places to get started in investment properties are, if you are young and purchasing your first home, a multifamily property can be a great toe dip into having investment property. You buy a duplex, a 2-unit, you're going to live in one, which means you can put a much lower down payment down. You have a tenant in the other side. Maybe your tenant is your friend. Maybe it's your family member, right? You're there. You are property managing because you're active. It is still work for you, right? Your employee, theoretically, right, is living next door. But it's an easy way to get into investing, and it is a lower cost way of getting into investing. And it's a pretty, I don't want to say risk-free, because everything is risk, but this is your primary residence. So at the end of the day, if the poop hits the fan, you're also living there, and this is you're paying your mortgage, which is also your housing costs, your shelter.
Yeah.
So that is like toe dip number 1. Toe dip number 2, we talked about 2 episodes with Airbnbs in the second home, is buying yourself a vacation home somewhere where you would like to use it, where the main use of that property is vacation, but you will also utilize it to leverage it to make a little bit of money when it makes sense for you. That is a toe dip. Your expectation on that property should be that we make no money.
Right.
If you do, it's a great bonus, but that is a great toe dip into what would it look like to own actual investment properties.
Yeah, I think it's well said.
All right, what's next?
Cool. All right, next question. Let's see. Let's go with, I just got a raise. How do I not blow it and actually make progress with my money?
Cancel your TikTok, right?
Cancel your TikTok and your Amazon account.
You want me to jump on this one, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the biggest thing is you're like, okay, especially if you get a raise where you're making like no money, now you're making some money. Like that's probably the biggest challenge, or the biggest jump to get through, because you're like, I've been waiting so long to buy these things that I've been holding off for forever, and I just want to get them. I think a lot of just deal with percentages on things. Like, okay, if let's say my raise is $1,000 a month, 20% more is going to go to just buying fun stuff. 40% more is going to go into saving in this account. 30% more is going to go to doing this. So just like chunk it out and create a system around it. Because I think the clients that I have that are successful when these things happen, they already have the systems in place before you get the raise. And then it's just like you're just using bigger numbers. The challenge is when you're doing nothing and then going into that and say, okay, I'm just going to do this, or I'm just going to buy this stuff for a little while, or I'm just going to go to this house now because then I'll get my next raise. Then you're kind of always in that cycle of chasing your tail. You really like want to see it as like, look, I'm used to living my life on this level. How long can I steep it? Or like, what if I just increase it a little bit and then use the excess to save and stuff like that? So you really, really want to have systems in place prior to that revenue jump.
Yeah. What my suggestion for people, especially if you are on more of the Gen Z or young millennial phase, right? Derek sort of mentioned I have these things I want to buy. If it's a big enough raise, pick one of the things, buy it. get your satisfaction. Say, I did the thing. The second piece to it is I had a client and I thought it was really smart. She got actually a fairly significant raise. She was not ready to buy a house yet. That was in her 1-year plan. So what she did was open up another savings account that was not attached to her current checking and savings account. She could not move money. And she had that raise direct deposited in that account. And she had that for an entire year, and she saved an entire down payment on that because she knew my rent is the same, my current, nothing else has changed but me.
Right.
I want to do this thing. Why don't I? And she knew that like if the money was accessible and just in her savings account, she could grab it, she could move it. She made it like hard for her to get this money, and it went away before she ever saw it. So I thought that was like a great kind of option.
Yeah,
so.
automation is big with that stuff.
All right, what else we got?
Cool. What's the biggest thing you've learned while doing this podcast, both as podcasters and also as professionals in your own industry?
Who's answering this one?
Well, I think we have to both answer it, right?
Right. Okay.
I mean, I learned a lot about credit scores from Steven.
Even though I listen to Steven all the time, I think I wrote this on social media, like one of my favorite episodes because there's just so much information to learn.
Yeah, like I thought I had a pretty good handle on it and understanding like all the little things that go into understanding your credit score, even like the little tricks like, don't wait to the end of the month to pay stuff off, especially if you're like in line to buy a house or a car or something like that. Like, I'm like, well, I mean, I paid off every month. Like, what's the difference, right? Like, so like just those things I thought were pretty interesting going through.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I think my thing would probably be all of the financial advising terms. Like Roth, backdoor Roth, double secret probation Roth. I don't even know, 401k.
We don't tell people about the double secret
probation Roth. Crypto, like all of these different things that you hear about, but to like actually have them defined, I think has been really helpful for me. So that's probably for me, again, different industry, right?
Yeah.
I work in finances, but not financial.
Right.
I think that's been really interesting. I think from the podcast standpoint is recording a podcast is easy. Okay. Having a conversation with somebody is easy. All of the other stuff, putting it on the internet, advertising it, publishing it, summarizing it, making transcripts, making episode titles. That stuff is hard. It's a lot of work. And I think we've done a good job at like sort of figuring out like, I'm good at these things and you're better at those things. But like, we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. I would 100% echo that. This is like my favorite part about doing the podcast. If all I had to do was come in here and record with Kelly, that'd be like,
yeah, we have a great time. We chat, we learn things.
Later. Yeah. But then it's like putting on all the work at the back end to make sure it's like effectively out there. It's, sounds good. Justin helps us edit it and goes through compliance, which is our fun thing.
Well, and the other thing that people, I don't know if people realize, like if you're not friends with Derek and I don't work together. So like we don't see each other weekly.
Yeah.
We talk maybe once a week. And so like, it's not like two people who are like every day, like, what do we do about this? Or what do we do about that? We like sort of come together and do this podcast and then we like go back to our real lives and like do our jobs. And it's like the momentum, I think that's sometimes hard.
Yeah, that's true too. So, kids getting in the way, like, calls from school in the middle of the
podcast. Calls from school. I canceled in the last month. I don't even know how many recording sessions with Derek because I had like a kid sick. Yeah. It was like and we would have like one every other week. And on that one day I had a sick kid. Yeah. And like, that stuff's like hard, man. Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Next question. Are emerging market investments still considered a risky option?
Kelly?
Yeah, I'm not answering that one. Call that a definition. I don't know. We've talked about emerging markets. So we have.
Emerging markets. Those are like, companies in countries that are still developing, like Brazil and, India. And even I think China's still somehow considered a developing country or emerging market. I mean, they're pretty merged. So do you want the technical answer to that, Justin? So if you look at the standard deviation of the S&P, it's 16.99, but the standard deviation of the no, I'm just kidding.
Oh God, that's the glazed over look we talked about last episode.
At the end of the day, they're always going to be a little riskier because if you got to think the government as much as messed up as the U.S. government can be, and you may feel it is that way. A lot of emerging market companies are much worse, right? We have a nice rule of law here. Things do happen, but like we have, attorneys and all the other stuff that will actually, vote on things. And if you have a contract, they have to honor the contracts. Like that is not always the case in other countries. So yes, they can be riskier. I will say this, like it's usually worth having some exposure in your portfolio to it because they do go in cycles. Like they're outpacing the S&P 500 this year.
Nice.
So like, yeah, I mean, have a small percentage of it if you do, but they're definitely gonna be riskier. But like this is where maybe having even a more of an active manager that knows and picks companies within these countries that knows these markets better than you just picking a blanket index fund can actually be a little bit more useful, because you're not just picking every single emerging market company. You're picking hopefully the better ones, not guaranteed. But that's probably the way I would go about it if you wanted to invest in that.
I agree. Sure. Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
All right. Let's switch it up a little bit. Let's go with, what's your biggest money pet peeve?
Ooh. Like for myself or for other people?
I would just say in the world itself, like what do you see most often that kind of drives you nuts that other people do?
Okay, I'll answer this one because we already talked about credit. It is that credit is a scam. That is probably my biggest financial pet peeve, is that we are locked into a system that we don't have control over, that is vague and opaque, that gives you very little feedback, and that system controls your finances, your financial future. It controls your interest rate. It controls so much of your life, but nobody teaches it to you. Nobody explains it to you. You can't just go on a website and say, what's the formula for having great credit? Because it's vague. It's very vague. And, you know, not having credit is just as bad as not paying your bills on time. And like, how is that fair? And that, I know why we have it, right? You are proving your ability to spend other people's money responsibly. That's the point of credit. But it is also the point of credit bureaus and credit agencies to get you to take out credit to make other people money. Full stop. That's my TED Talk. Welcome to my TED Talk on credit. It's garbage. But that's my biggest pet peeve, is just credit is very difficult. And I see great people struggle in a system that they don't understand.
Well, yeah, they make it hard to understand. I have a couple. I don't know if should I pick one or just should I...
Start with one. We can go back and forth. I got other ones.
All right. This is going to be a whole episode.
This is a great question.
I think my first one is having way too much cash than you need. You know, like people are like, oh, cash is king. I got to have cash, blah, blah, blah. Like you only need to have a certain amount of cash to cover your expenses and do some other stuff with. If you need it for buying a home, that's a different story. But like you telling me I don't want to invest in the market because it's gambling, and you just said I'm just going to have cash because cash is king. I can't stand that. I think it's such a wasted opportunity. And it's the thing that I have the hardest time getting people over to the hurdle with, to part with that quote unquote safe cash to get something that's quote unquote risky. That's probably my biggest pet peeve. I think my other slight one is like the amount of influence politics has in your investment decisions.
Ooh.
It really annoys me when we have to make every decision through the lens of who you voted for. Because honestly, it's generally your perception is not the perspective. If that makes any sense.
That was profound.
Thanks.
I liked it. So I'd say my other one, would probably be, and again, I'm like so broad, I'm like so general with these, but it's just the lack of financial education in our educational system. We teach kids how to do advanced algebra, and we teach them how to square dance, but nobody tells them how. And it used to be like, we don't teach them how to balance a checkbook. Nobody balances a checkbook anymore.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It really is about the broader spectrum of where is your money going? What are you doing with it? How do you manage it responsibly? How do you make a choice between, you're a new college graduate and you have 2 job offers, and one is a higher salary and one is better benefits. How do you compare these?
Yeah.
And there's just so little education on finances. And I honestly feel like it's getting worse instead of better, because finances are getting more complicated. And the people who are teaching it to you are your parents, who were operating in a system that's different than the one that you're operating in now.
Yeah, it's very fair.
So those are my pet peeves.
And they usually have their own blemishes and things too.
Yeah. And then my last one is credit card companies that prey on college students at college orientation. I hate them.
Get the free shirt.
Get the free shirt, get the free poster. Hate them. You're terrible people.
Yeah.
Those are great. I love all those. Let's go back. Let's do, how do I balance investing for retirement and saving for a down payment, especially when everything feels so expensive?
It's a duel, Derek. It's a duel.
It's a duel. Should I challenge you to a duel here?
Challenge me to a duel here.
I would say this may sound like counterintuitive coming from a financial advisor, but like, for some people in some instances, like it's okay to scale back a little bit on the retirement saving to get the short-term thing. Because if you really want to position yourself to get a house and not overpay for it or have a lot of, other issues, like it may be okay to say, like, I'm saving 10%, maybe dial it back to 5% for the next year so I can get the house. And then you always go back up to the 10% later. Like generally you're going to have, if you do it early enough and you're not overdoing on the house, you have some time to make it up on the retirement end. That may be like surprising advice, but
No, it's advice that I really agree with. And I always go back to this with people is that 95% of people are paying, and I always talk about housing as two, right? There's buying a house and then there is shelter.
Yeah.
Okay. Shelter is the place in which you live, your belongings are stored, and you are safe. 95% of people are paying for the shelter that they live in, of adults. They're paying for the shelter that they live in. So you have to make this payment pretty much no matter what. And there are two choices. You can either pay someone else's mortgage, which is renting, or you can pay your own. And when you pay your own, are you going to get every dollar that you paid in your mortgage back again in equity? No, you are not. You're paying taxes as a part of it. You're paying insurance. The market goes up and down. But you are going to get a portion of it back again. So renting for 5 years, you could pay $3,000 a month for 5 years. You leave and you get nothing, right? You actually might get your security deposit kept because you didn't leave the apartment in broom swept condition. If you own a home for 5 years, when it's time to sell it, in the majority of cases, you will get something.
Yep.
Okay. Maybe it's not a ton of money. Could be $10,000. Could be $100,000. You got to make smart choices, but you'll get something back again. And just like investing, time is important in real estate, right? And there's like this cheesy quote that the best time to buy real estate is yesterday. And that's the truth. It really is, right? The longer you have it, the longer you hold it, the more it's worth. The longer you have it, the more you hold it, more equity you have. So waiting on that. And I think that's, again, part of the millennial trap that we're in is we're not buying houses until we're 38. We are losing so much time to build equity in our properties.
Yeah, and I think waiting for the proverbial, the market's going to crash. Like, housing markets so rarely crash.
Yeah.
And when you look back at the last 100 years, I think it's only happened like 3 or 4 times.
Correct.
It's like really, really rare. So I think the big thing is just don't buy a house that's overextending yourself. That's like the big key. But if you have to scale back on retirement for a year or two to do that, go ahead.
Agreed wholeheartedly.
All right, we only got a couple more. Let's do, what's the real deal with student loans right now? Should I refinance, consolidate, or just keep making payments?
They're trash. Is this controversial? I'm feeling controversial today.
I feel like you're a little saucy today.
I am a little saucy today. I think we probably have both similar answers, but I'll answer mine. For those of you who don't know, I worked in higher education prior to mortgages. I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before. I worked in higher ed for many years. I have a lot of really strong feelings on student loans. There are 2 types of student loans. There are good student loans and there's predatory student loans. So it really depends on what type of loan you're talking about. Was this a subsidized government loan? Was this an unsub loan? Was this a private student loan? You have to look at each loan individually to decide what you're going to do with it and what the best course of action is. The worst thing that you can do is ignore them, defer them, or go on income-based repayment plans if you don't have to. Those are the worst things you can do. Why is that? Income-based repayment plan does not care about amortization. It does not care if you will ever pay this loan off. So all you're doing is paying a little bit of interest and extending and extending.
The only thing I would throw into that is if you are on track to get your loan forgiven, that's when that can make sense.
Okay, true. But that's like, you got to know what kind of loan you got. You got to know not all loans can be forgiven. Your goal should be to pay these off, man. Get rid of them. And I know that for a lot of people, you have a student loan that you didn't even really understand when you agreed to it. Mm-hmm. Okay. You didn't get it. You agreed to something that you're like, yeah, I got to go to college. Everybody gets student loans. That's what we're sold, right? You got to have them. And every year you sign up for more of them. No one is paying attention to the quantity. You graduate and you're like, oh crap, I have $100,000 in student loans. I'll pay it back eventually. Because everybody has this. We've like normalized it. Yeah. Everybody has it. And then you go on an income-based repayment plan or you go into deferral and it just keeps growing and it keeps growing. And now it's $150,000 and now it's $200,000 and you just can't get rid of it. So what you're going to do with your student loans, should you refi them? Should you pay them off? It really depends on how much you have, the type of student loans. And truthfully, you should be sitting down as part of a discussion with your financial advisor, right? Your student loans are part of your full financial package. It's part of all of the money that you need, because if you make it to 65 and you still have student loans, it doesn't matter what you've saved in retirement.
Yeah, I'm a big balance person, so I think you need to weigh it against like the trade-offs of not saving anything for retirement just to pay it. Because I think in general, like these streams of life are like not where you want to be, right? So if you're just doing everything you can to just pay down your student loans and then I'll save for retirement, that's generally not where you want to be. So you want to make sure you are still saving for retirement. You are finding a way to pay down the loans. Like the refinancing is such an individual thing. Like I had a client, like before I got her as a client, she refinanced her loans because she got a better rate. Great. She was on track for forgiveness. like not great.
Not great.
You know, so now she took something that was going to be forgiven. I think it was over almost 100,000 that she's
And now she got to pay back.
She got to pay. Yeah, cool. She got a better rate. That's the problem. So you really want to look at your individual situation. There's a lot of resources out there where you can call numbers and say, hey, like, what if I had this plan? What about this plan? You know, when would I pay it off? Like, you really want to do your research and really figure out like where you are with it, because they're just anchors. They're, honestly, at the end of the day, like, great, you got the education. Unfortunately, most jobs don't, you know, out of college give you that enough money to just pay stuff off right away compared to what you loan or borrowed, for better English. But yeah, that's what I would do. Just individual situation all day.
Yeah. And my last piece of advice for this one is, as millennials and Gen Zers, it is our job to look at the system, know that it's broken. Okay. And educate our children, and really, like the elder millennials and the Gen Xers, you may have kids going to college, and have honest discussions with them about the college choice that they're making, what their options are, how much this is going to cost them. Are you getting a job in underwater basket weaving with a $200,000 loan? Like, can you ever pay this back? Okay, maybe you're going to go to law school, so having higher loans might make sense. Like, you have to weigh this out with your kids. It cannot just be about, I want to go to X college because I like their football team. I want to go to X college because it looks like fun. You really have to educate them about what are you anchoring yourself with for the rest of your life.
Right. Well said.
All right. There's 2 questions left, but they're similar, so I'm going to combine them. What's one financial habit you wish you started when you were in your 20s, and what's one financial habit you're glad you started when you were in your 20s that you're thankful for now?
What's one you wish you started? Was that the first one?
Yeah, so there's which one do you wish you had started in your 20s, and which one are you glad that you started when you were young?
I know the one I'm glad I started with. I was super poor when I first started. Like, not a lot of people, like, your financial advisor, like, no one's talking to a 25-year-old, being like, oh, here's all my money, here's $1 million.
Right.
So, like, I was so poor when I first started. But we had a 3% match on our 401k, so I still committed to the 3% match. I'm very glad I did that. The other thing I was glad I did is I bought life insurance at a young age. So I locked in a really low rate for a really long time. One of the things I wish I did, I really wish I bought real estate question. So I graduated 07. I wish I had money. I had no money, but then 08 happened, 09 happened. All the houses were so cheap. If I bought like a triple decker in Boston when I was living up there, I would have been so much better off today.
You would be rolling in the dough.
Yeah. So there's that. I'd say that's probably my. Not like I can't really say it's a regret because I didn't really have the means to do it. So I might have to think about the regret piece of it. But
I have a direct regret that I had the means to do and I didn't do. Much to your like, oh, I did my 401k match. I didn't.
Yeah.
So I worked at a job where I had a stupendous 401k match. It was incredibly high. I have still never heard of any other institution that had one as high as the one that I had the opportunity to take. At the time I was 25, my salary was very, very low. And that $50 a month or $50 a paycheck I needed in my brain. Now, did I really need it? No, because some of it went to like the bar. But I felt like I needed that money. And I was like, retirement is a long way away. And if I could go back in time, I did not take that 401k out for 8 years. I lost 8 years of it. I lost 8 years of it. And honestly, at this point, that was a couple $100,000 that I flushed down the toilet. So that's my biggest regret. And it's actually a conversation I have with young adults all the time that like, in your first job, if they give you an option, you take it right now. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's $20, do something.
Well, the thing is, you just get used to it.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, you get your paycheck after all the FICA taxes and all the other stuff. Like, you wouldn't know the difference if you threw an extra $20 in there for your own retirement.
And especially if there's a match, because that is free money. It is free money towards your retirement. So that is my biggest regret. The best thing that I did is I do think I always inherently did understand credit to a degree. And I was always very careful with my credit. In my 20s, I was very limited with the cards I took out. I never fell for the college campus poster t-shirt people. I was very responsible. My parents were always very responsible with credit and did have discussions with us. And so I went into my 20s and 30s with a great credit score. Sometimes like surprising to myself. I'm like, oh yeah, how great my credit is. But that has afforded me things as an older adult that I wouldn't have had otherwise. I've never had to proactively work to fix my credit. And I work with clients all the time that have had to do that. And it is painful and it's expensive. And I feel bad for them. So I'm super glad that I was always responsible with my credit.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
What else we got?
That's it.
That is it. Well, thank you everyone for your questions. And thank you, Justin, for helping us MC this today. You listeners have to give us your feedback on producer Justin.
Yeah, when we want to know, should we fire him?
Only if it's nice. I want
No,
to hear from you.
no, yeah, only nice things. What else could they say negative, Justin?
Yeah, right. They're not going to see Justin on the video either. Justin is hiding, so when this
Yes,
gets up
that
on
was a
YouTube,
strategic plan
Yeah.
on my part.
yeah, you won't see Justin. But maybe we'll take a selfie with Justin to put on the gram later
There you
today.
go.
Yeah,
Let's
there
do
you
that.
go. Yeah, that'd be great.
But yeah, we'll be back for
We'll see you in the
season
fall, right?
3.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you have ideas for anything you want to learn about, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, don't be strangers.
Sounds good.